Live from the legendary podcast bus in sunny California, it's America's funniest new podcast.
Oh my God, what are you doing?
We think it's funny. And now, here are your hosts, Mark Schiff and Daniel LaBelle.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of We Think It's Funny. I'm Daniel LaBelle, and with me is...
Mark Schiff.
And Mark, who do we have here in the studio today?
I'm Kozak.
Just going to answer things like...
Yeah.
I'm Kozak, Mark Schiff.
I don't have anything to
How are
say.
you feeling? Pretty good.
Yeah.
You guys finish each other's sentences. That's adorable.
I'm glad you're here because originally when I thought he said Kozak was coming.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
And I was going to buy lollipops and
He loves Kozak.
Kozak.
and I got a lot of ball jokes but it's
Before
not,
my
it's not
time.
happening here.
You're dating yourself, Mark.
I was thinking Kozak has an army. Kozak. I guess he converted.
Yeah.
When I was little, people used to say that at me from older generations, and I was like, "What are you talking?" Kozak.
I heard a
Kozak.
great...
Did you get that?
Yeah.
He did an old people joke.
There's a great clip
Nothing wrong with it.
of
You're a wise man.
Norm MacDonald's on your buddy Jerry Seinfeld's show, Comedians in Coffee, and he tells a great Kojak story.
Mm-hmm.
I won't try and do it, but if people want to check it out.
Oh, so Kozak comes, and he says, "Wait, I don't know who that." I don't do a great one.
So you're on tour?
I'm on tour. I'm on a music tour this time. I did some comedy stuff a couple days ago. I came in and did a.
Now I know you as a comedian.
Yeah.
And obviously it didn't work out.
Right.
So now you're doing the music.
It's actually in reverse.
Really?
I've been doing music for a good part of 15 years, performing with a band and writing music for film and television, composing for film and TV. I was in that world for a long time. I still am. And I'm actually here doing a tour. My band is opening for Matisyahu, my band Distant Cousins.
Cool.
It's like an indie folk pop trio. And we're opening for Matisyahu. We did a tour in the summer, and we're going to be doing a West Coast leg, doing the Troubadour. We're going up to Ventura. We're going up
Troubadour,
to
I love
Santa,
the Troubadour, Santa Monica Boulevard.
Yeah. So it's a legendary spot. We're excited about that. And then I was able to do some comedy while I was here too. So I'm kind of been in both worlds. These two children of mine, music and comedy.
You know Matisyahu pretty well, right? He's been on your podcast. I saw him on your show.
Yeah. It's funny, like we lived here in LA around the same time, and then we both found ourselves on the East Coast, and we recently linked up and collaborated on some music together. We wrote him and another friend. We worked on a song that's on his new record, and then my band and his and him have been touring together. So
you're a great collaborator, by the way. You, I mean, not everybody is. Some people are lone wolves, but but you know, I love your J Sketch stuff, the stuff that you do with Ellie Leibovitz and Mikey and you know, it takes a certain kind of you know, I think I'm a great collaborator, but a lot of stand-ups are not. They don't want to have anything to do with anybody else. Just them, the microphone, the stage, that's it.
I think it goes with my personality. I'm an extrovert, and so when you work with other people, the benefit is that you get an immediate audience to whatever you're doing. Keeps you in check, refines your own stuff.
Right.
When you're working on things, to have friends to do it with, I think elevates a lot. It challenges you to make certain compromises and sometimes gets you out of yourself a little bit, which is fun. There's a time and a place. I think there's a time when like you trust your gut and there's a benefit to doing things by yourself because you can be hyper efficient that way.
Right.
So when I make content for my own Instagram channel, like I've developed a sensibility. I know it. I trust it. And it's sort of me and the audience and nothing in between. But in my creative life, I need that balance. I need that collaboration.
So to write a song, you want to write it with somebody?
Yes.
How about to write comedy material?
That is different. I mean, it's always, you know, when I'm in the process of developing stuff, there's that time and place when it's just you and the paper and a blank page and you're trying to figure that out. And then I also like one of the things about comedy that I think it gets overlooked or isn't as focused on is this collaborative process of being able to write together and workshop material. Right. And I think that's like in music, you're always kind of writing with people, jamming with people. There's a team element to it. And I think when I first got into comedy, I noticed everyone's just siloed off in this corner, judging themselves and then judging, is he funnier than me? And there's something nice about, as you get more into it, the supportive elements that I think comedy could use of like people like helping each other's bits out and working things out and then testing it out. You know?
Listen, I write everything by myself, but then I will run it through another comedian.
Yeah.
But listen, really, ultimately, you run through the audience.
Sure.
Because there's no clever in the world that will give you the answer. The audience will.
Mm-hmm.
You do impressions.
Yeah.
So let's say you're doing an impression about Trump. Are you collaborating with him in a way? I mean, seriously, I don't know how to ask this question.
No, it's a good question. I am internally interfacing with that person because people ask like how to do it. There's a lot of like technical questions about it. I don't really have answers to the technical questions because it's closer to having perfect pitch than learning how to play a song. In other words, somebody says, I don't know, that's an F because it's an F. I just hear it and it's an F. And it's hard for people with perfect pitch to sort of explain or teach it. You can improve upon certain skills and what you notice, but for me, it's often like this process of watching somebody and then I act it out as if I'm that person. Like if I imagine yourself looking in the mirror, what do you see, right? You see yourself. So all I do is change the character in the mirror and that tends to reflect back into what you see. So if I'm looking at Trump in the mirror instead of me, I go, it's much more visual than it is actually the sound. Before you even hear the sound, you see it. It's very close. You see it. And you know that. I mean, before you get to the sound, and if it's Jordan Peterson's, well, it's like, yes. I mean, but before I even said a bloody word, you could see it was coming,
Wow. One of the great things, I remember when you did the Candace Owens' show.
Yeah.
And Candace Owens, who's now made herself very famous in the anti-Semite world.
Very famous.
Very famous.
Huge in the anti-Semite world. She's doing so great. So huge for the yeah.
That's hard to do because it's very competitive in the anti-Semite world.
These days, absolutely.
There's more than 1 billion people who are vying for that role.
It's very hard.
To take the top
Somebody's
spot.
like, well, I hate the Jews and I'm not getting noticed at all. How are you doing it? But she's really gone pretty off the rails with it. But in the earlier stages when she was just flirting with anti-Semitism, she had you on the show to defend being Jewish. And I thought you were great. You were very articulate. I told you at the time when we saw each other at the Lighthouse, I was like, I often will watch these things and I kind of cringe because I'm like, this person's representing me in a weird way as a Jew. And I'm like, I would have been able to handle that better, or whatever, but or I wouldn't be able to handle that well, but this person didn't either. But like when I watched Ami do it, I thought if I had the skills, that's exactly how I would want to do it,
Thanks.
And it was interesting because she couldn't help but love your impressions. Like at the end, like he does Jordan Peterson for her, and like she lights up, like she's so excited. And she can't even pretend not to like him at that point in the interview.
Well, but you could still like the person's talent. You don't even know you disagree with.
Well, she's pro one Semite.
Right. You've got her.
I said to her in my second conversation, I was like, look, I don't know if you're anti-Semitic or not, but you're definitely anti a few Semites, right? Let's talk about that. And I think that human beings are complicated. And I think oftentimes we look at these things and it's understandable in a post-October 7th world that us as a community sort of say, okay, this or that. It's very much a binary, and we understandably need to start categorizing things to say, okay, the stakes are high, we're in danger, our community's in a very vulnerable position, where do you stand? And we draw these lines. And the problem is when people cross those lines and say things that are objectionable, a lot of people take this approach of siloing themselves off and saying, I'm going to call that person out and write some hit piece article or make a video saying how disgusting. But at a certain point in the early stages of this, when people were looking at the situation in Israel and what was going on with the Jewish community here, there was a chance to say, look, like, are we so fragile? Are we so vulnerable that to simply engage with people who are saying things that are very objectionable, things that we disagree with, I think we can handle ourselves. And I think we're strong enough and resilient enough to engage, be civil, make a good impression and show how constructive dialogue can work. And maybe that's a better way than simply patting ourselves on the back and siloing ourselves off. And there's a case to be made for that. And I think at a certain point, people do cross the line and they're not engageable at that point, or they're not acting in good faith. And that is sort of a case by case basis. But certainly in the beginning, when I was starting to see this rift, our conversation started because I called her out on Twitter through something that I thought was objectionable. Because she was a fan of the comedy, she invited me on to talk, and it was a really constructive, good conversation. And I think that there's a human element to all of this, where in her case, I think it's a lot about temperament and loyalty and people she finds favor in and people she doesn't. And I'm not making excuses, but I think there's ways to circumvent those tribal lines, and comedy is certainly a way to do that.
So, see, when he says things like circumvent tribal lines, I can't come up with wording like that.
No, circumvent is...
Well, when you do impersonations of intellectuals for like 3 years, your verbal fluency increases a little bit, you know?
Candace Owens was very close to Dennis Prager.
Sure.
Worked with him. He totally respected it. Had no inkling that this woman was going in this direction. I wonder if she always was there and hid it. You know, it's interesting. She had the Kanye thing, right?
Yeah.
She had Kanye, but Trump also met with Kanye after the whole anti-Semitism thing.
That was a little bit of a setup, actually. The behind the scenes of that was there was a bit of a troll move to like have Kanye meet with Trump and Nick Fuentes and all these things and sort of make Trump seem by association.
By the way, like can we just say for 1 second, how cool of a name is Fuentes? I mean, I know he hates Jews and everything, but I like the name Fuentes.
I'll give it
Fuentes.
And then Nick is such a common name to pair with Fuentes.
Fuentes, it's weird for the most prominent white supremacist anti-Semite to have a Hispanic last name. I'll give you that.
Nick Fuentes. All right, so let's go back to the question because I was also very distracted with the camera. Let's take it from your question about Prager from the beginning.
So I think in terms of your question,
just for editing,
take the question.
Let's start it over from the question. If you thought it was genuine,
right? So I thought Candace Owen, you know, she worked with Prager with a lot of Jews. She really seemed to be in their corner. Prager got her own podcast, so I can't believe that he knew anything that you know how deeply rooted this anti-Semitism was in her. It's not like, and then one day it just sprung out of her.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a psychoanalytical element to it that feels a little uncomfortable for me to go there, but I will, because why not? We're just schmoozing about it. I mean, I don't think she was secretly hiding a deep, dark Jew hatred all this time and went, haha, gotcha, Jews.
Right.
I don't think it's that. I think for her, she's operates from a place of one, let's say, genuine intellectual curiosity. So there's a part of it that is that, like, I think the conservatives might have assumed she was more of an intellectual than she was more of just a commentator. And that when you don't know what you don't know, then when you start to look into things and think you're making these revelations, you're actually just kind of revealing a little bit of ignorance about the history of anti-Semitism or the history of Jewish prominence or involvement and drawing strange connections. But when the conservatives as a whole kind of pedestaled her as some intellectual that might have been misguided, and then it comes back to bite you. And, you know, and you could see it early on in certain things in podcast interviews where she would reveal like that now that I'm, you know, good on certain issues like BLM or speaking out against Blexit or, you know, that the black community doesn't have to be owned by the Democratic Party, all valid points. And I think from personal experience, she could speak to that with a little more authority. But then things can get a little tribal and say, now on climate change, I'm going to reject all that. And I'm going to go on Joe Rogan and say, you know, like, I just don't believe in climate change. I mean, we're all tribal actors in a way, but you kind of adopt a certain platform and say, I'm going to go out and defend all those positions. And that can happen in this space. And everybody's guilty of that confirmation bias in some way. So I can understand that. And I don't mean to, I'm not trying to like, just throw shade. I'm just saying I think everybody from a place of humility can observe that in themselves and in this people in the commentariat. And that's what's happening.
I thought when she showed up on one of the shows wearing a brown shirt and the armband, I said, you know, that's kind of, I looked and I asked other people and they said, don't worry about it.
It's okay.
But we learned a lot.
She just waves like that. It's not a big deal.
Let's just take a minute because you can learn a lot from your supporters, but you learn a lot from your critics too, for better and for worse. There are some things that are obviously worth challenging and some things that you have to go, wait a second. Now, if I'm trying to follow the trajectory, there were a lot of Jewish organizations and Jews on the left who were criticized by Jews on the right, like Prager and Shapiro, for kind of getting on board with the whole identity politics thing and calling everything anti-Semitic, and just like a lot of liberals were calling everything racist and finding things that weren't there, or firing Whoopi Goldberg because she made some weird comment about the Holocaust from a place of ignorance, and we said, oh, she needs to go to retraining, and like we patted our, not we, but a lot of I won't have to name names, but we all know that we would pat ourselves on the back for saying we're combating anti-Semitism, but I think you're really just pushing people away.
Right.
And I think people like Ben Shapiro and Prager were just as critical as a Candace Owens would have been of those kinds of people, even Jewish organizations that were getting on the train of wanting to be part of the marginalized communities that were calling out anti-Semitism and racism where it does not exist. And that was not productive. But post October 7th, when we saw this rise in anti-Semitism and support for Hamas across university campuses and across Europe, just because you can be critical of calling out anti-Semitism where it doesn't exist doesn't mean that when it does exist, you don't call it out because you don't want to be called a leftist.
Right.
I mean, being able to use critical thinking and walk and chew gum at the same time was the problem. And that's what I spoke to her about in our first conversation. It's like, look, you can still be intellectually consistent and say, hey, that's anti-Semitic or that's wrong. But I think if I'm getting psychoanalytical about it, it's like part of it is when you're in a position where your temperament is to go against the grain. It's good to go against the grain, but I guess it all depends what the grain is. And
when she knows,
certain
she knows that she's anti-Semitic.
No, she will tell you to the core she's not anti-Semitic. Yeah. She will say that. But I told her, I think the mistake a lot of people make when criticizing her, and I'll sort of wrap up here, is like, on this point, it's hard to tell somebody what they feel in their own heart. We really don't know what anybody is inside. You can only judge behavior and statement. So I said, look, and a lot of people, when they would call her an anti-Semite, she would just put up the defenses. And I think one of the reasons our conversations were so constructive is because if she tells me personally I'm not anti-Semitic, or somebody tells you they're not racist, then I believe them. But that's separate from the behavior. And I can say, listen, you just might not be sensitive to the statements you're making and the things you're engaging in, these tropes that you might not be aware of what these things actually mean historically. And if I'm taking what you word that you don't have animosity towards like individual Jewish people, then or Jews as a whole, even that's irrelevant, because what you're actually doing is still providing a lot of red meat and providing excuses and apologies for people who do hate Jews, and you're creating this atmosphere. Whether or not you feel it in your own heart isn't really my concern. I'm judging behavior, actions, and statements and things that you're doing, and I think
And it's not helpful to call us Juden, I don't think.
And I being animated by anti-Semitic ideas is definitely something going on there. And I think also it's a personal thing, like having experience with whether it's the Daily Wire or a certain political culture that accepts certain viewpoints, where the majority of people are very pro-Israel. There's an instinct possibly in her to like question and be like, wait a minute, I don't just want to think that and for thinking that's sake, and then push back against that. And some people say it's just to get a reaction, just to get clicks. Look, I don't know, but there's certainly a pattern going on here. It's very disturbing, and it's disturbed me. It's disturbed Prager. He's tried to point it out.
He did, and
he said, for reasons only God knows. For reasons only God knows. I don't know. For reasons only God knows. I don't know she has gone completely haywire on Israel and the Jewish community. For reasons only God knows. But remember, it was left-wing Jews she was battling that called her a Nazi when she was speaking about Hitler at any point before October 7th. And I think she's lumping it all into the same boat in some way, too.
I'll tell you this, Mark. I had a career setback once some years ago, and I didn't understand why it happened.
Yes.
And I was trying to figure it out, and I was Googling things, and I was Googling people. Before I knew it, I realized it was all the Jews. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even kidding. I was like, it all goes back to the Jews. So, like, if you go down any, like, conspiracy rabbit hole on the internet, it all paths lead to the Jews at the end. Like... So I remember, like, looking at all this and being like...
Let's clip this. Let's just clip this.
I remember looking at it and being like, well, that's interesting. So the Jews are behind it, huh? And then I was like, wait, that's obviously not true. Of course. But all the logic seems to work out up until that point. So as somebody was not looking for the answer of the Jews did it, like, I got there, which was interesting, I thought, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know the joke about the two old Jewish guys. One is reading the... Nazi newspaper. You know that show?
No, go ahead.
So these two old Jewish guys are from Europe, and one guy is reading the Nazi newspaper. His friend goes, Saul, what do you Nazi newspaper? He says, I love this paper. He goes, what do you love about it? He goes, because it says we're doing so well. We run real estate, we run politics, we own the banks. This is the great.
Is it cutting out for you too?
No, mine is not.
Did Mark's audio cut out?
No, it might be your headphones. Sorry. That are just like trippy on that thing.
A whole bunch of us knew Bill Cosby really well. And when I say really well, I don't mean like we knew what he was doing. So
you woke up a few times in pain in his.
Were you ever in a hot tub with him?
So he was very nice to me.
Yeah.
You know, a couple of times I met him. He took me to his car. He would discuss stand-up comedy. I mean, really, really nice.
Gave you a drink.
He was. Seinfeld knew him. Chris Rock knew him. And we all loved him. We thought he was the greatest comedian. He had a secret life that none of us knew about.
Right.
And I think I find it virtually impossible that she didn't have that too. I mean, it exploded at such a level like his that it doesn't come from being set off by watching too much MSNBC or
No, but in her case, you can trace it if you're watching closely enough. There's a few things. First,
you can trace it with Cosby too.
Yeah. But I guess like there was an instance, for instance, her first real clash with the Jewish community, if we're going down this rabbit hole, was the Kanye thing, where Kanye came out saying, "I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people." And incidentally, every single time she brought that tweet up to me, she kept throwing in the word "some." I'm going DEFCON 3 on some Jewish people. She kept saying it like that, as if to soften the blow. He never wrote "some." It's an important word.
Yeah.
And so Kanye said, "I'm going DEFCON 3 on some Jewish people," and she kept like throwing it in. And subconscious or conscious, I'm like, he didn't say some. He said Jewish people. But when that happened and she came up with the thing sort of defending him, why did she defend him? Was it because she agreed with him about Jewish people? I think it's also because she liked that she was friends with Kanye and was like defending her friend and had trouble making the distinction between just because I'm friendly with somebody doesn't mean I have to publicly defend everything they do and say. And so she felt this pressure to do that. Now, I remember that happening. It was like a weird moment. It was a weird moment at the Daily Wire. It was a weird moment publicly that people were just like, her first like eyebrow raise about that. Like, what? Like, weird. Yeah. Then the Israel-Gaza stuff happened, and rather than expressing any kind of sympathy for what was going on, there was a little bit of that, but mostly it was like, we don't need to be involved, all this kind of America First type of narrative stuff. And yeah, it is surprising like how much, I don't think it's like this deep, dark, like calculated secret. I think it's a matter of relationships over the years, making observations and drawing strange connections. Like, remember when Kanye said that, whether or not it's Kanye having a mental breakdown and that's where it's all coming from, the amount of resonance that it had with people within a community that supported him was so disturbing. And to like not see that was, for us to be like, wow. So like,
I can almost guarantee you, and I don't know for sure, Mel Gibson grew up with an anti-Semitic father.
Sure.
The guy would spew this stuff. It was a given. Mel Gibson one day exploded with the Jew stuff.
Right.
She must have had it as a child in her community, the anti-Semitism. She swallowed a lot of it.
Right.
It sat and bubbled. Anyway, these are the things I don't know at the end of the day. Let's bring her in. We have her here now.
I'm happy to.
Come on in.
What is DEFCON 3?
It's really DEFCON 3 is like a level of alertness and like readiness to attack. It's like an air military term. I think Kanye wrote DEFCON 3, which is a which is not correct.
That's not
but
good.
At the end of the day, we have to judge. Like, it's like when the left has this standard of wanting to get rid of racism in everyone's heart everywhere around the world. It's like at the end of the day, people feel what they feel inside. I judge words and actions and behaviors, and whatever people feel inside, it's not my place. The second you tell somebody they are something as the totality of their identity.
Like Minority Report. Remember that movie, Minority Report?
Before they commit the crime.
Yeah, before you start analyzing people like, oh, this person is anti-Semitic, but I haven't done anything anti-Semitic yet.
Yeah.
We found it in there.
So I just think it's more constructive in general for us as a community to engage with what we're hearing and seeing and behaviors that are like tangible and judgeable rather than telling somebody what they are inside. Not to say it's not necessarily true. I don't know.
I think Netanyahu said, and I've heard this from other people, if somebody says they're going to do something, trust them.
Right.
That's just it.
Yeah.
Iran says they're going to blow up Israel. Trust that that's what they want to do. Don't think they're just fooling around and just saying this, because they have nothing better to do. Let's.
Andy Kaufman went up to Elvis Presley and told him he's going to be a big star.
And
then he did.
Okay.
So
again, I want to go back to the Impression thing for a second.
Sure.
Now, when I was growing up, the Impressionists would turn around and then away from the audience, get that face solid, and then turn back.
The reveal. Right.
Yeah. Well, Frank Ocean would turn around and come back as, Kirk Douglas and Rich Little.
Sure, the face turn.
Have you ever met Rich Little?
No.
I did. I worked with him at the Tropicana Hotel.
And I think Jim Carrey would do it too. Like,
he would turn around and
be Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Sure.
You feel more like the guy when you do that face.
Oh, for sure. It's all a
now,
visual
can you teach us how to do an impression?
We can try it. Yeah, we
can
can workshop this. Yeah,
sure.
That'd be fun.
Sure.
The turnaround is a particular move. Sometimes to snap it right into place in front of people is also kind of fun too. Because like impressions can be gimmicky, but I like the writing process of like an impression being sauce or seasoning on a good bit. Because oftentimes if you're just doing an impression within a minute or two on stage, it's like shredding on a guitar where you're like, check out what I can do. But if you have a good song that supports it, it's much more effective.
Do people heckle impressionists like they do comedians?
Sure.
Like if you're doing a really bad impression of someone, yell out, it's awful.
It's wrong pitch.
I'll be honest with you, Mark.
Wrong octave.
I wouldn't know.
Oh, we talked about you on this podcast when Elon Gold was here, because we were talking about how unusual it is for someone to be able to do a good impression of someone who's not in their gender, and you do a very good Kamala Harris.
I want to talk about it. We could try a workshop of Kamala or a Trump. You take your pick.
Yeah, I like to do Kamala.
Oh, Kamala?
Okay.
You want to do Kamala?
I'll do Trump, you do Kamala.
Okay. So
you workshop with him and then...
Okay, so Kamala?
Kamala.
Yeah.
Sounds Jewish, doesn't he? Kamala.
So
there's the la. Kamala, it's like a Yiddish.
Kamala, Mamala, right? She goes by that.
She's got a Jewish husband. By the way, I just want to say something about her husband.
Sure.
And a lot of people, this guy, and I'm a married guy, 34 years. How long are you married?
15.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I think 9.
Doug Emhoff
yeah,
has the worst job in the world now.
Mm-hmm.
The husband of Kamala Harris. What she's probably putting him through is so horrible. I mean, she probably wasn't easy to begin with, but DEFCON 3.
Oh my God!
Losing this election.
I'm going DEFCON 3 on this Jewish person.
Yeah,
right.
And it's not because she hates Jews at all. It's just because the average wife gives the husband a hard time.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to go with this.
I heard on Twitter they were getting divorced, but maybe that was just
I heard a rumor that they're getting divorced also.
He banged he had slept with one of the campaign staffers. So
really?
Talk about a hard time.
Is that right?
That's what I saw it on Twitter. I don't know if it's real.
It wasn't me.
Is that right?
Let's go. I want to do Kamala. I want to do it.
Oftentimes impressionists will.
Can I do a black person, without being called a racist? Because it's going to be awful.
We'll get you into makeup and we'll figure this out.
Wow.
People have been calling you a racist your whole career. It's only helped you.
Yeah.
First of all, she's not black. She was Indian. I thought she was Indian. And now she wants to be black. Yeah. I don't understand. Right. Now she wants to be black. But Indian and Jamaican, there's nothing more spicy than that. Nothing more spicy. You have curry and you have jerk chicken. Can you combine? You burn your tongue right off. So on Kamala, there's a few things. You'll see impressions always kind of warm up with a particular thing that snaps it into place, that activates the impression, right?
Yeah.
So and I remember a friend of mine who's an impressionist with Trump. I was doing Trump and I was like, it's just terrible. It's terrible what's happening. But then he did the lips. He did this one move where it was like, I'm like, oh, that's the thing. And it's solve the puzzle. You're like, once she did that, it was.
Oh, it's the gasping in the air.
Well, so if we go to Kamala for 1 second, I'll do Trump with you. So Kamala would do that okay. And watch the face. So first it's sort of like a tightening. So tighten the face. And then just be like, just say this. Just say, I'm speaking. Into a smile, back of the throat. I'm speaking. But barely enunciate and just go, I'm speaking.
I'm speaking.
I'm speaking.
I'm speaking.
Yeah. So, and then a couple of things.
I'm speaking.
And before you say anything, just practice these moves. Squinty, weird, contorted smiles like this. Okay, there you go. And now give me a laugh. You're crying more. And then we say something like, I want to be clear. So I want to be clear.
I want to be clear.
You're going clear. So clear.
I want to be clear.
That's better. Clear.
Clear.
Clear. Tongue in the back of the throat. Clear. Yeah. Oh, okay. I want to be clear, and this is important.
I want to be clear.
And then the bit is you have to just say random sentences that do not arrive at particular points.
I want to be clear.
She speaks in run-on sentences. So
be clear, Mr. Trump.
She wants to be clear.
Don't lose the visual, though. Look.
Yeah.
So if I look at this podcast, okay, say everything in front of you and keep going and be very obvious. We are sitting on a couch in a bus that is traveling all around the country, doing the work of the aspirations and ambitions of everyday Americans to come together in a way by which we all know, and I want to be clear about this, so this is important, by which we all know that in sitting on a couch that is gray, it means that we are not black or white, we are gray, and existing in that middle ground for middle-class Americans, and I'm a middle-class kid. And there you go.
Excellent.
Yes.
I think I'm going to dump stand up, and I think what do you think? You think I got a shot at it?
You got to stand up, and a Kamala will give it a shot. Maybe you might get heckled, but and then you always end up. We're going to do it again in 2024. Come on, man. So that's Kamala. We can switch to Trump now. The visual. Okay, just breathe in through the sides. Yeah, through the sides of your lips. You have to do an upside down smile. So it's not a frown, it's an upside down smile. Watch. And keep your mouth clear. And then it's hands. Oh, so much hand movement. Look at that right there. I'm barely, even my voice hasn't even changed. And now it's the inflection. Pause before you say the sentence. And then right there, add a little grovel to the bottom of your voice. And then before you say anything at all, you got to have such great sentences that form, and little pauses. Little pauses are they're so helpful. They're so helpful. Keep repeating those phrases. Come on.
Let me hear them.
Okay.
Danny, let's see it.
Okay.
Danny.
I'm trying.
Yeah. Squint the eyes. Head to the side. Less movement and more like, ooh, ba, ooh. Now say like, we're going to make America so great.
We're going to make America so great.
That's it. You're getting it.
Yeah.
You saw that?
Yeah,
You saw that?
I saw that.
So great.
So great. And a little bit of pauses. It keeps people on their toes. Try it like that.
We're going to keep America so great. It's going to be...
Let's try a nursery rhyme. Itsy bitsy spider is Trump. So watch. The itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout. It went all the way up, so high, probably better than any spider you've ever seen. It went so fast, and then down came the rain. Sleepy Joey washed it out. It was terrible. And washed the spider out, and out came the sun. That's me. And washed it all away. And the itsy bitsy spider, that's America. It came up the spout again and was so great. And
better than ever.
That's what we're going to do. There you go.
Great lesson. Yeah,
Hope that works. Yeah,
I feel like I got something out of that.
And when you do it, imagine you're seeing him right in the mirror, and you're looking at the mirror instead of yourself. You're looking at Don. Right, so beautiful.
I once asked Daryl Hammond about doing impressions because I can do great accents, and he said if you can do great accents, you could do great impressions.
Yeah.
And his advice to me was to go on YouTube, find the person you want to impersonate, and play like 2 lines of them, and then repeat it, and then go back and play the 2 lines and repeat it, and then move on to the next 2 lines, and or words, 2 words, and then another 2 words, another 2 words, and focus on each time.
Right.
I tried it a little bit. It didn't really help me that much.
I did an impression of Bob Dylan on the Letterman show.
Yeah.
So it was a line. I said, Dylan. Oh, I did. Yeah, Dylan at Thanksgiving. Pass the peas, please.
Pass the gravy. Pour it all over the turkey.
How many roads does a man walk down?
Yeah.
He does a great Bob Dylan.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
You call him a man.
And I do a great Mark Schiff. I do Mark. I do Mark Schiff. Just a little bit there, And I used to do my wife. She kind of bothers me. I bother her. She's a little bit of that kind of. That's Mark Schiff. It's a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and she, Yeah.
There's that mark, and then there's a more whispery mark. Yeah. The more whispery mark. I can't do it, but I'm saying if you did that with...
it's like, so how long are you in town for? How long, what do you it's a little bit like that.
It's good. Yeah. It's good.
I don't know. I listen to tapes and stuff, and I'm used to hearing what I sound like, but I really... You ever really understand what you sound like?
Well, coming from the music world, when you record so much songwriting and recordings and make records, you kind of start to connect the outer voice to your inner voice. It used to be this, like, my internal sound was one thing, but when you watch your videos of yourself so much, that line kind of blurs after a while, I would say. So, in the beginning, you're appalled.
Example. I was listening to Jackson Browne, young Jackson Browne, 1977, Running on Empty, young kid, young voice, and then I was listening to Jackson Browne 45 years later. Does he recognize how his voice changed, or is it so slow and
incremental? Yeah,
that you don't know.
Well, that's interesting. You mean just over the years with age, as it just shifts? And
it happens.
Yeah,
I mean, it's going to happen.
Yeah. You ever watch an old stand-up bit of yourself from like the '80s, and you're like, "Wow, my voice is higher and different and more resonant."
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like a whole different thing. And you don't. Yeah, you're not aware of that until like the time passes. But I just think if you're constantly recording your own voice and listening back, whether in audio form or video form, just like you can sort of, it's like, have you done like camera stuff, film work, TV work, anything? And you kind of know when you're acting what it's going to look like after you've done it so many times. The first times you're on camera, you put it up, you're just like, this is so weird and it's awkward.
Right.
But then after you've filmed and edited and seen, you can kind of project what the final will look like based on the real-time performance.
But a lot of actors don't want to see themselves after they've done the finished product.
Yeah.
I mean, Katharine Hepburn says she never saw any of her movies. Woody says he never goes back and looks at them.
What do you mean he's there when they're editing? He's in the cutting room.
Well, there you have to, but she wasn't.
It's just part of getting seasoned as a performer.
I missed the question about Matisyahu.
Yeah, sure.
Are you getting any of the, he was getting some flack for his
Jewish
fan not too long ago.
So he and his early tours post October 7th, people were showing up and protesting. So there is like security and precautions that are taken on the tours, but thank God this last summer one we did, what's nice is you're actually getting a very philo-Semitic crowd, like not like people who come out. You spend all this time on social media. It's like such a cesspool, and you realize, this microcosm here is one thing, and the stats are skewed one way, and how people feel about Israel and the Jews. And you go out there and to the real country, upstate New York and Massachusetts, and these like more rural places, and you have these people come out who are either local Jewish community members or like kind of Messianic Jews or Christians who are very like evangelical and love the whole Zion messaging of Matisyahu's music. You get this incredibly supportive community. So
do Jamaican people come?
The reggae community might be a little bit split on the Israel.
Because he sings like he's Jamaican.
Sure, and I think in the reggae, like Rastafarian Jamaican community, it's hard to know where they, if they view Israel as the white man, if they look at it that way and they throw it through that sort of oppressor lens.
I'm not even talking about Israel. I'm just talking about
Matisyahu. But Matisyahu has been such an outspoken advocate and unapologetically pro-Israel. So it's an interesting conversation. One would have to ask him about how that's divided and how that resonates in the reggae community. I'm not exactly sure.
When we were talking like a few minutes ago about how you sound and hearing how you sound, I wonder I'm a fan of his. I went to see him recently. I like him. But I wonder if when he hears himself, does he hear like, oh, I sound very Jamaican when I'm singing?
I don't think it's a conscious thing. I think it's more what kind of music you're raised with that inspires you. That's like, when you sing, you kind of emulate the influences that have made you and formed you. Just like singing rock and roll has a certain inflection and style. I don't think he's looking at it as some sort of ethnicity, but more about a style of singing.
The interesting thing also when it comes to singing and impressions is when I can sing as different singers.
Yeah.
I can do great impressions of singers. When I start talking, it's very hit or miss. But
interesting.
But I could go do karaoke. I could do Paul Simon. I could do Bob Dylan.
Can I hear
could
a
do
Paul Simon?
McCartney. Give me a song.
Like You Can Call Me Al?
Scarborough Fair.
Okay. This one. Hold on. It might take me a second to warm into it too. I get the news I need on the weather report. I can gather up the news I need from the weather report. Hey, I've got nothing to do today. That's
very
like
nice.
Right?
Yeah.
But
who was that?
That's Paul Simon.
It's nice but,
Paul Simon is Paul Simon when he's interviewed is a very soft, sort of spoken.
Right.
And that there's different chords you can use. That's a major chord, and that's a dominant 7 chord. And then you can use all these different gospel chords and jazz chords that I've used over the years to form songs. And that's sort of his way, if you listen to his interviews. And a man walks down the street, he says, why am I soft in the middle now? Why am I soft in the middle now?
Right.
Rest of my life is so hard. Where's my wife and family? What if I die here? Who will be my role model?
Yeah,
now that my role model is gone.
But it's impressions.
I heard a 6-hour interview with him.
6 hours.
Yeah,
Are you sure it probably was one? It felt like six.
No. It was in. Oh my God!
Was it Howard Stern?
No,
an old one or a new one?
No, new.
Yeah,
it was.
Charlie Rose?
No. It was. He writes a lot of books. He's a genius. The guy.
Malcolm Gladwell.
Like hours of, and I just loved every minute of it.
Yeah, it's very deep.
It was really about his music, not about his life, and not about his relationships with art.
Yeah, deep.
Like the newer songs of his, or this one isn't even that new, but like he sounds to me more Paul Simon-y in them. Like, You're the One.
No.
like that sign, like little by little, bit by bit, little bit by little bit. Now you got it. That's it. This is like. And what do you think? If things go south, take its temperature every hour.
You got a nice warm tone. I like that.
Yeah.
So I got a Jewish question I want to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're talking about. So I was talking to this guy, friend of mine, who's recovering from he had a heart attack, and he's just going back to work now after 6 months. And he's a psychologist in a prison, actually. Prison.
Yeah.
But anyway, we were talking this morning about raising kids. He says, a lot of these people here in prison had very bad childhoods. And then he says, he's a religious guy. He goes, but our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Yaakov, they weren't the best parents either. Their kids didn't end up so well.
Right.
50-50 return rate on the first two, right? Abraham had 50% success rate.
Yeah.
Isaac's 50% success rate on child raising.
Yeah.
It wasn't until Jacob that he had 100% success rate. And that's questionable because they did throw one of them in a pit.
So one of the things that they don't do is they never talk about, they talk about these guys, but there's never a sense of humor about them.
The patriarchs?
What?
Which ones? The patriarchs?
They're all very stern, serious, and God-fearing and doing whatever they do. But never is like, do they raise their kids? There's no lightness to it. There's no humor about it. And I was just wondering about this. Like, is this something that the Torah never wanted to record, or did it not exist with? Because they had a sense of humor. You're just born with.
They were Jews.
And you're going to laugh.
They weren't Jews, actually.
Yeah,
they weren't yet Jews.
Not yet.
Yes.
Not yet.
Not until Jacob.
Maybe that's why they weren't funny yet.
Oh. There you go.
Once after the fight with God, he was like, "Well, that was crazy." After the fight with the angel, dude, we got to be funny about this. My rib is killing me.
Well, they say the first joke is in the desert when the Jews said, "What? There weren't enough graves in Egypt."
Yeah.
To Moses, like that's like the first recorded joke in the Torah.
Yeah.
So maybe that's when it starts getting funny, when they really start kvetching.
They're kvetching. Yeah, I used to do a routine about it. My great uncle was, in Egypt, and he was one of the guys that built the pyramids, and they were always beating the hell out of him because he was going, "Why don't we build it here? What do I have to drag it another 400 miles from here?
Right.
It's just heavy. My back is killing me already.
Yeah.
This is a nice spot. It's nice and cool in the evenings here, and but."
Yeah. Maybe the humor that we all know today is like born out of the struggle of the Jewish people, which developed as we contended with the world. So
let me update it. Do you raise your kids with a sense of humor?
Of course.
Yeah.
How? What do you do?
I have a sense of humor that every now and then I take out of the box that I keep in the closet in the back room. And when they're good, I'll take it out and I'll let them play with it for a little while.
What do you do?
What do I do? For real?
Yeah.
I'm... Well, I tell them bedtime stories, and I'm funny about it when I tell them bedtime stories. Like, I abandoned reading the books to them because I had too much reading.
Yeah.
And now I just make up the stories, and they like that better. So, like, every night I'll add a new installment to the story that I'm telling them. And
funny, or do you make it scary?
Sometimes they're funny, and I try to add some suspense, you know, good characters. Right now we've got Princess Wendy and Bongo the dog going through the cloud men fighting to get through the clouds.
It's a great hack to bypass the actual reading material, because if they can't read it yet, you just kind of make up what's going on. That's fine.
I did that with my kids.
In my case, first of all, I do impressions not only of celebrities, but all of their friends and teachers.
Wow.
They go nuts for
Very
that.
cool.
Like, can you do Morachani? And I'm like, "Hi, everybody. So wonderful." And they can't believe it.
Like, that's a great Morachani, and I don't even know her.
I don't even know her either. It's perfect.
Yeah.
And
so
can they tell
imitating
their friends? Did they tell you to do it for their friends?
I told them, like, guys, just so you know, it's between us. Don't bring your friend. I don't know who can handle it. They're all kids. I mean, we're talking about real children here. I also imitate, like, it's one thing that's funny that we do is imitate them each other, like when in their bad moods. Like, this is when so and so is having a tantrum, and I imitate.
Oh yeah, I do that,
and they laugh at that. They all laugh at each other.
Right.
Can you? And then they do us. I say, try. This is Abba. Like, walking. They imitate their mom, and it's a nice way to see how you come across. And then, if you just like lay down on the floor as a dad with little kids, they'll just start jumping all over you like you're some invited trampoline, and that's the best stuff.
Yeah.
Do you tease them at all?
I roast, roast Ella sometimes because she's like, she can be really moody and stuff. So, so I'll be like, she always goes, if you put your arm around her, she'll be like, I don't want your arm. So like, we'll go. I go to Sophie, I don't want your arm. I don't want your arm. She goes, I want your arm. And then Ella starts laughing at herself because she knows she's being ridiculous. And
they'll say enough. They'll tell me when it's enough, and I'll keep going. And as the comedian dad, you just keep going past that 60% threshold, and they're just like, stop. And
when did you start doing comedy in addition to the music?
Yeah, so basically, comedy was always this like neglected child of mine. Like, so speaking of children, but creatively, I had music and I had comedy. Now, comedy was what I was sort of really part of my identity as a person. I was funny to my friends, family. I would get up in front of my parents, like they're all boomers, Holocaust survivor grandparents, kind of the Borscht Belt culture, going to the Catskills in the summers. Right. My dad's a funny guy. He was always kind of that magnetic center of attention guy, like at the tables when we were growing up and with his friends, making them laugh. He was their like social comedian guy. Yeah. And I would get up, my earliest days entertaining people as a child was like getting up on the table and imitating my parents' friends or celebrities. Ami, do this shtick. So I kind of got that taste for it. But when it came to like, getting serious creatively and then professionally, I took to music. I was playing, learning instruments and playing all through elementary school and high school and singing. And I would also like learn how to sing by imitating other singers, like you were talking about. Right. And I kind of taught myself how to sing that way by imitating different.
Did your parents know you had a talent?
Yeah.
Even really young?
Really young, even really
So
young.
it wasn't like we wanted you to be seen, not heard.
Yeah. They were always like they noticed that it was particularly uniquely good and not just like silly, but like when I could imitate.
Was
and
it
do impersonations.
Fun for you doing that for them?
Yeah. So I got bit by that bug early as far as being very comfortable in the center of attention and getting that reaction from people. Mm-hmm. But music was where I channeled all of it because there was this structured path in music that doesn't exist is not as defined in comedy. With music, you can take lessons. Like when you're a kid, as a young boy, you don't take comedy lessons.
No.
They're like, oh, he's very funny. Let's get him some comedy. There's
no
a different
such thing.
No such thing.
No,
and
nowadays there are like things
it's a little more, but like
for kids and stuff. Yeah.
Traditionally, in the terms of the different art forms,
right.
You're taking piano
it's
lessons.
Like judo.
Yeah,
those judo lessons every kid takes. Yeah. Nobody becomes a judo expert.
No one becomes a ninja. Yeah,
no.
And even so, as a kid, you can. There's the school play, there's drama, but there really isn't comedy as a taught form, which is maybe unfortunate because. I think there is you realize there's a lot of things to joke writing and structure and those kind of things that are very important and fundamental to good comedy. Mm-hmm. Either way, I started taking lessons as a kid, learning how to play the bass, learn music. I went to Berklee College of Music where I studied. There was like a path of like how I can make music and take it to the next level beyond a hobby. Music presented a pretty clear path on how to do that. And comedy was just kind of like, everyone's like, yo, you should totally like do stand up. You should do SNL. You should do these things like you got. And I was like, yeah, I know, but there was no real means to do that until I started. What changed was social media. So I started to take to social media early days on TikTok. And it was all kind of in line with with COVID as things started to shut down. And I found myself like with time, like without like live music shows and music to focus on, I was able to make a little bit of room to start putting up content on social media, not as a promotional tool. I used it in the music side of things to like say, hey, come to a show, advertise basically. But I started to say, what's the easiest thing I could do on social media that like doesn't take too much, like there's a path of least resistance to posting, and it was doing impressions. And I started doing my impressions on social media. Long story short, built a very nice organic audience on TikTok and then Instagram and YouTube doing these impressions, some sketches. And I was able to all of a sudden awaken all of these circuits and really nurture this child that was dying to be fed over the years. And then, because in the entertainment world, like there's different lanes you can pick. They don't overlap, especially early days. Like even if you're going to be in the music business, like which part, are you going to write for TV? Are you going to write for other artists? Are you going to make your own music? And even in comedy, are you going for stand-up? Are you going to try to do sitcoms? Are you going to develop stuff for other people? There's all these different hustles. And for a long time, they didn't really intersect. And social media kind of blends all these opportunities where you can start to build an audience of your own for yourself without the gatekeepers of the 90s and 2000s in the middle to tell you if you're good or not. And I was able to do that. And then I wanted to perform stand-up. I'd been performing on stage as a musician for a very long time, very comfortable, but stand-up was this own beast to start to climb. And I started doing that. I want to say 2019, 2020.
I think I was on one of your early shows with you at Stand Up New York for Ellie Leibovitz.
And I was like, okay, I have an advantage here because the stage is not foreign, the mic is not foreign, but this medium is, I know, a whole different thing. So I just really started to go to, when I moved to New York in about 2021, I was going to open mics every week, hashing out that first 5, tight 7, tight 10. And now, thank God, like, been doing long sets and getting very comfortable.
So how often do you add content to the internet?
It's a daily
thing.
Daily.
See, that's
every day.
I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And
technically you do, because we put up clips from this show every day.
We do put up clips, and I do make my Facebook posts all the time.
Yeah, it's fitness. It's like fitness. However, how often you do it is how much you'll get.
I can tell you all about that.
Yeah. So, I think if you gave most people, when straight people, I don't mean like sexually straight, when people who aren't, and they'll try to be funny around
suit
me.
and tie kind of people.
Right. Suits.
Yeah. So a husband and wife, friends of ours,
Yeah.
they'll try to be funny around me. Never the woman. She's never trying to be funny.
Mm-hmm. Well, men have to try to be funny.
I can't think of one woman that's ever tried to really be funny. The husband tries, and they always shoot him down. The wife goes, "Don't try to be funny around him."
Yeah.
Or just, and they just put a friggin' stop sign right in. But I think if you gave the average person an opportunity, we have a crowd out here, there's 20 people. You have a choice, go and try to be funny or serious, dramatic.
Right.
They'll pick dramatic every time.
Yeah.
They wouldn't know where to begin.
Really?
Yeah, well, because funny is very...
Where do you begin?
Because it's not for the...
Go out there and be funny.
Yeah.
You could tell a sad story about your cat that fell out, whatever, or, your kid who's sick, or,
I thought you were going a different place with it. I thought you were going to say, like, if these wives didn't shoot them down, the average person would be funny.
No, that's not true.
No.
Although, look, men, historically, we're not beautiful. We have to... And if the lower you are in the birth order, you got to fight for some attention. And women don't care as much about the physical, and funny is attractive. So
very attractive.
We developed that as an evolutionary tool because it's very disarming and a great weapon to have. But I mean, they'll pick dramatic because, to get rejected, you're either the king or the clown if you're performing
Richard
funny.
Burton, who is one of the greatest actors of all time, when he was on Broadway and Mort Saul was on Broadway, any opportunity Burton could go over and watch Mort Saul work, he was so enamored by him. He said, "How does he do this?" Mm-hmm. He just gets up and talks, and he has a newspaper, and people are laughing. Burton had no idea how to do this.
Well, one of my earliest inspirations, there were all these like little anchor points along the way that kind of pushed me into comedy. One of them was I went to the Comedy Store and I saw Andrew Schultz, Andrew Santino, Tony Hinchcliffe, and Tim Dillon. They had this night of comedy at the Comedy Store when they were sort of on the ascent before they were where they are now. And the room was just shaking with laughter.
Yeah.
Like it was
amazing,
one of those
right?
murderous nights. And to witness that in person and be there is so powerful. It left this like mark on me. And I realized also like the other part of that was listening to Seinfeld was on Tim Ferriss's podcast. He had an episode
it was a good episode.
And I think I've listened to that twice. I mean, I was just like, the way what I've always appreciated about Seinfeld, almost more than anything else, is how he talks about comedy and articulates the comedic arts.
Yeah.
Because like I said before, there's no school, there's no lessons. And he would concede to that, but at the same time, he also is giving the lessons without realizing it.
He does. He likes to...
because he loves talking about comedy and as a technician. And that he basically said... Because I would say, watching stand-up, what's going on here? How is this happening? And as a musician, how is this happening? And as a musician, you're always kind of demystifying the process. You listen to things, and my instinct is to go, how was that chord formed? How did that happen? It made me feel sad. Why? Why is it sad? What makes a chord sad? What makes a chord happy? What makes it romantic? And so jokes are the same way. And stand-up, he said a line I won't forget, which is good stand-up is good writing. So simple.
If it's not on the paper, it's not on the page, it's not on the stage.
Yeah, so when you're up there performing, it's under this illusion that someone's just there. And that's the highest level when you're transcending what looks like you're doing comedy and you're just there. And really understanding joke writing and structure, it's the same thing as music. So I'm always in this space of comparing comedy in my musical brain to try to synthesize it, because music provides you certain things like an armor and a protection that comedy doesn't. But they're kind of related. They're like cousins in the same thing.
Is the armor and protection that, like, if the song's no good, people don't heckle it? Is that what you mean?
If somebody hears a bad note, they don't get angry.
Right.
If somebody hears a joke they don't like, it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, the rejection is immediate.
Right.
And music provides armor because there's a barrier to entry with music. In other words, the music will tell you you're not ready before the audience will. Mm-hmm. If you have to learn a song start to finish, you got to learn the song, and you can do it in the privacy of your own home with your band or yourself, and no one has to know that you suck. Comedy has to be worked out in front of everybody, exposed, and you get good by building up those scars. And you have to bomb. Music doesn't require that. Music requires a different barrier, which is like learning an instrument and the craft, which anyone who thinks they're funny can just get on stage. But they experience the pain of that when they're not ready.
It's the most brutal form of honesty.
Yeah.
Because you stand up and the audience has no mercy on you. They are judging you 1,000%. Everything you say is under the microscope to them, and they're judging. I was just talking, you mentioned Jerry. I was just with him this weekend. We talked comedy for many hours. And we were talking how it's like baseball. Like, you get up at bat every time. And then you do the best you can with each bit that you have, and sometimes you hit it out, and sometimes you strike out, and
no matter how good you are.
That's what you talked about for hours?
No, that was a small part.
What's the rest of it?
We talked about you.
No, but then I also was like,
I'm serious. There must be a lot of good stuff you guys talked about.
In a way,
right?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah,
there is a lot of good stuff.
But it's like combat. To me, it's combat. That's why I like the idea of the punchline. When you nail the punch, it's like you're boxing. And in a sense, the audience is you're
one thing
up
he
against
doesn't
them.
understand is actually, and he said it, how people write songs, great songs.
Interesting.
It is a concept that he goes, I don't know how people do this.
Right.
And he knows a lot of these musicians that. One of my favorites is always Alan Sherman. Do you know his stuff at all?
That's
Hello Mother, Hello Father.
Hello Mother,
Hello Father.
Yeah.
You should listen to one song in particular. It's. You know his stuff at all?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's unbelievable. He's the greatest comedic songwriter I think that's ever lived.
Yeah.
Tom Leary
is pretty amazing. Great too.
There's a song called Good Advice. It's 7 minutes long. And it's nonstop hysterical.
Yeah. Well, I think Jerry and yourself and anyone in this space understands something they don't realize they understand about music, which is rhythm. Because comedy is all about rhythm, right? And music is all about rhythm. And one thing that's cool about kind of coming in both worlds is when comedy is being done right and you're connecting and sort of transcending, it feels like music. They feel the sensation of is the same. It's lighting up the same circuits. And I think,
can you do stand up then sing a song?
Yeah, I do that in my act.
You do?
Yeah, I'll do like musical stuff and sing the bits.
Now it's a different type of rhythm.
Yeah, but the principles are the same. In other words, like I look at someone like a Mark Normand or a Jerry as like a very tight kind of syncopated type of music, right? When you're listening to Jerry's stand-up or a Mark Normand in that school where it's very like funk fusion or classical, where it's every note, everything is precise. Hey, wait, pause, then break. It's the same thing as tension and release. The principles that exist in both mediums are there. Tension, 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 release. Tension on the chords up here, and you're home. And the note goes high and big and makes people feel big, and then you deceive them and go this way, and they might laugh in a comedic context, or like, but you stay engaged and you keep them, and then you resolve. And the same kind of things happen when you're telling jokes. And I would say like someone like a Jerry or a Mark Normand are like in that sort of classical or very tight sort of school. Then there's types of comedy that are a little bit looser where you would look at sort of a jazz solo where someone's
like
riffing.
Mort Sahl I always found fascinating in that way. He's kind of jazzy in the way he did.
Yeah, or if you listen to jam bands, they're kind of loose and figuring it out. That's what when I see that, I think of also comedians who are riffing with the crowd and playing off of energy. And it's all the same principles are applying. Music is still happening. Comedy is still happening. And you're arriving at it from different places. And there's no wrong or
with the audience is something that is generally a waste of time for stand-up.
Yeah,
I mean, you don't want to write.
It depends. I would say some people use it as that kind of crutch.
Most.
But it's the same way as like a composer would look at an improviser and say, ugh.
What, like a jazz guy? Like
a classical composer would say, oh, he's just soloing and improvising. That's not music.
Yeah.
So it depends. Have you ever seen Andrew Schultz do crowd work or... Even some of the Matt Rife stuff, he's a newer guy that gets a lot of hate. Right. But people who are like improvising, or even Mark Normand stand up on the spot. You ever watched Mark Normand?
I did Mark Normand's mother's podcast. How's that grab you?
Really?
His mother has a podcast in New Orleans.
Have you seen his stand up on the spot where people throw out premises and he has to flip them into punchlines really quickly?
I have seen that on social media.
Yeah, it's amazing because his mind is so quick that you can flip into, and it's obviously different, but the audience is bought in on it. Now, some comedians get up there, and if they don't, they go, oh, what's this? What do you do? And if you're a host, I get it. You're trying to get people, whatever. But some people are using it as a crutch. I've seen some people, it's the same thing I see is like, when you watch the Grateful Dead or Fish or a great jam band improvise or a great jazz quartet improvising, it's high level. Or you see people just jam and it's a mess. And I used
to do that on stage.
Yeah,
I used to do blues. I would ask the audience for an opening line to the song, and a closing line. I would improvise the blues song.
Okay. While we're on
the audience loves that. Yeah, go ahead.
We have a few stories that we improv off.
Sure.
And that's how we wrap up the show. And I know we have we're at that time.
Okay.
So I'll throw some of these out there. We're gonna see what where we find the funny in these things.
Mm-hmm.
So the first story here is a neurosurgeon says that his mom's stew recipe boosts brain health and prevents dementia, but she makes it the best. So it's actually a Persian doctor who's talking about, I think, what is basically a gourmet sabzi. Yeah, gourmet sabzi.
Gourmet sabzi.
They love the sabzi.
Yeah.
I was telling Mark when I was reading the headline to him before, I said, she has this great recipe to prevent dementia, but she forgot it. But he goes through all the ingredients. The first one is the meat, which Mark found objectionable, right?
Okay.
I'm a vegan.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get dementia, obviously, because I'm not going to eat his mother's stew.
Not enough protein.
By the way, we did. There was a woman now who's.
By the way, Mark, you just told me that 5 minutes ago.
Oh.
Who's the?
No, there was something. Danny and I did a thing about just like Mom made.
Just Mom,
we put together a little
just
pilot.
Like Mom made.
And there was a woman today who some guy's mother. They just got a billion hits on something that he just had his mother cooking.
We were onto something.
We were.
This is what we do. We come up with an idea, we start working it out, and then we abandon it completely.
It was good.
It was a good thing.
What are we workshopping here? What do we want out of this? What's our final product?
So here we go. So what do you think? Basically, using food to fight Alzheimer's, combining brain-boosting benefits of grass-fed beef, turmeric, fresh herbs, and he says the beans... Herbs.
Herb is a person.
Herb. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So if you had to put together, some sort of, ingredient thing to cure, let's say, phlebitis.
What is that?
See,
if you have to ask, you can't afford it.
Yeah, phlebitis.
So eczema.
Uh-huh.
What would your recipe be?
If you had to cure phlebitis.
No, not phlebitis.
Oh, eczema.
Eczema. Phlebitis is like your feet. You can't walk. It's
the gout.
Gout. You want to cure your doctor?
Well, let me tell you something. I got peed on a Russian hotel, and it cured my eczema.
Wow.
By the way,
so urine can do many things. Great. It turned my skin orange, and it cured my eczema. So it's orange, but it's so smooth.
That's why your hair is like that?
It's so smooth from all the pee in a Russian hotel.
Huh? I had a friend, last episode, Mark talked about how he got all his teeth removed because it saved him a lot of money in dental work to put in fake teeth.
Yeah.
Those aren't his real teeth. That's true.
Yeah, that's the real thing.
Those aren't real teeth.
It's veneers, or they pull it all out?
No, they took them all out. So I have a friend who said...
Best thing ever did in my life.
Yeah.
Best thing, bar none. I said that last time.
Yeah, so you're a new man. So you took the words out of my mouth. So my friend says, Mark says on the show that it's the best thing he ever did in his life was removing his teeth. Right. Was he serious about that? I said, hard to say, but I think he was serious. You were serious, right?
Can you take them out, or they're in? They're
I can take them out.
You can take them out.
Right now.
So he said, I'm thinking
they're snapped in. They're snapped. They're not like false teeth where they rattle around.
They're just, my friend says, you never have to take them out, do you? Oh, go ahead.
Look at that.
And how is that? And that's the best.
And they're in.
Right.
He says it's the best thing.
Let me try it on.
My friend said, maybe I should take my teeth out.
It's like trying someone's harmonica, but I could just
I have no dental bills anymore.
Right. What are they made out of? Like a porcelain?
Yeah. They're a type of plastic acrylic. Yeah. And it's been years now. The best thing I ever did.
The best thing
I remember seeing my Zadie, my grandfather, the first time without his teeth.
I got married. My wife.
Horrifying.
Right.
He came outside from woke up in the middle of the night. He's like,
yeah.
Army, what they're doing? And it was like this. So
yeah.
No, I don't.
But that doesn't happen.
By the way, I talk about that. I never scare the kids or grandkids. They don't even know.
Yeah.
And this is the first time in my life I ever did that.
Right.
I don't know. But marriage. I got married 3 years in. She removed my nuts. So they're gone. And I said, this was so pleasurable.
Best thing he ever did.
My voice is higher now than it was before.
Yeah.
Because
It's good for a Kamala impression.
Yeah. That's aggressive, removing your nuts. Wasn't even intentional, but it happens.
Sometimes. Now, did that disgust you when I took the teeth out?
I can handle it. I'm a big boy. Yeah, I don't get squeamish.
You've cleaned diapers.
Exactly.
Right.
Once you have kids, you
what else you got there?
Everything.
Okay,
I like that. Okay.
So
no gourmet sabzi for you.
So he won't be doing the
He's going to forget everything.
He won't be doing the gourmet sabzi.
The president of the United States.
No sabzi, but Iran is a real problem. The food there is great, but the people, the government's a problem. The people are great. They're having a lot of problems.
Yeah. So, all of us hate to have work canceled, because every time we get a new job, every time we finish a job, we got to start a new business again to find one. And I was booked at the Syria Improv. And I had 2 weeks.
It's not even a city in Syria.
Headlining from Damascus, Mark Schiff. Oh, that's
and
rough.
that was my summer, as Billy Crystal would
It's
say.
actually called Damascus Laugh.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's
laugh your Assad off.
Yeah. Laugh your Assad off.
That's good.
Yeah, I like that.
Billy Crystal was there, you said?
No, Billy Crystal and Mr. Saturday Night, when he finds out his work is canceled from his cousin or brother, and he goes, "That's my summer. That's I have nothing." And he just got really miserable.
Right. So your summer, your upcoming summer.
Have you ever had to pass up a really big gig because being a Jew?
Yeah.
Like big money stuff?
Yeah, like opportunities and things like that, for sure. It stings when you come face to face with it, and you know. But I'll tell you something. The longer you spend in the game, when you realize it's never really one thing that does it, but more the long-term effort, then it makes everything less of a big deal. It makes it easier to not sweat the small stuff or the things that are perceived to be the big stuff. Because how many times have you actually been able to have an opportunity and then it doesn't give you what you expect?
It's a young people's way of thinking. If I don't get this, I'm finished.
So when you think like that, it's this romantic, like that one break. When I did that, that changed everything. I mean, people buy into that narrative.
But it was like that when Mark was coming up with the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. It was like that.
But a lot of people did the Tonight Show and never worked.
Exactly.
In
other words,
not everybody.
The winner, you win when you stay the course. It's always the long game. At the end, it's 10 years to an overnight success. The Beatles were working for 15 years before they exploded on the Tonight Show or whatever it was.
Sullivan.
Have you ever seen the documentary on Disney? Get Back.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit of those. It's great scenes when you see that stuff happen.
They're making it up right in front of you. They're inventing.
That's like when you come up with the punch.
Yeah.
That's like when you're making jokes that he goes, "Get back to where you once belong,"
and he's working it out.
It's the same feeling as when you go, "Oh, that's funny."
I think that's God sending it to him, and he's just pulling it.
Yeah, you're trying to interface with the vibrations of the universe effectively.
What else you got there?
Yeah. All right, here we go. Here's a good one for you. Defund the police activist goes viral after begging for help when everything she owned was stolen from her San Francisco apartment. The cops didn't do nothing.
That was the U-Haul, right? She was moving or something.
It's a real headline.
She put everything in a U-Haul and she went upstairs or something. She came back. Somebody stole the U-Haul.
Right.
So she was a big defund the police. I think that the police stole it just to get even with her. That they got it at the station house.
Yeah, it'd be funny if they arrived, but they were on rollerblades with no cars. He was like, "Hey, this is what you wanted." I was just in San Francisco, actually.
Mere hours after she filed the police report, she blasted the police for not immediately locating her stolen possessions. They haven't found bleep. The cops didn't do bleep. U-Haul made me feel like a effing file a effing police report, she told the Post. They can't. It's amazing. There seems like how is there such a disconnect with people?
How stupid do you have to be to realize you don't need a police department?
Right.
How insane, especially maybe.
I think you have to be pretty detached, privileged. I mean, a lot of this stuff really comes from, upper middle class, bored white liberals.
They're not affected by street violence.
Correct.
Right.
They live up in North Beverly Hills and whatever, and the kids got everything. And
the inner city gets affected and harmed the most by people who want to feel virtuous and good about themselves, so they get on these crusades to defund the police when they're fully protected.
When I was living at the old place by the shopping center, much more crime around there. It was much more anxiety. And then I moved here, which is a few blocks away, but it's much quieter. And I really was thinking, people around here, they're more liberal because they're really not in the thick of it.
Right.
They're like, they don't experience, like, if they should all go move to where I used to live and then see if they're like
People
really
live in
defund the
bad
police,
neighborhoods.
you know?
People live in bad neighborhoods know that they need the police.
Yeah,
of course, more
of
than anybody.
course.
It's always easy enough to advocate for policies that won't affect you when they fail. you
Yeah.
know? So you can feel good about yourself all day long for saying, I stood on behalf of other people, underprivileged people, and I feel good about myself.
It's a social experiment that I don't have to partake in. I can watch from on top of the hill.
Quite a narcissistic position. It's all the left-wing politicians that send to private schools while not allowing for charter schools and private schools in their areas. You know, it's like
but look who comes out of private schools.
Good for
many of the Jew haters come out of private, high-end.
Good for me, not for thee.
Yale.
Yeah. It's part of the great education. You learn about...
You got one last one?
Yeah.
That's very good.
All right, we ended on a win there.
All right, there we go. I gave you something.
You got a couple of handles for us?
Yeah.
Yes.
Follow me at AJ-Comedy on Instagram, also called Ami Kozak Official. AJ-Comedy on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter at Ami Kozak. The band is called Distant Cousins. Follow at Distant Cousins Official. The podcast is called Ami's House Pod. Ami's House on all your platforms from YouTube, Spotify, wherever you can.
I'm a fan of it. I've listened to a few of them. I like it.
Thank
I like
you.
it. Mark?
So, yeah.
I got nothing. MarkSchiff.com, at Mark Schiff on Instagram. My book, Why Not? Lessons on Comedy, Courage, and Chutzpah. My first book, I Kill, true stories of the road by America's top comics. My wife's Persian stew.
Yeah, that's more than nothing. I think that's a lot. That's good. And, I got comic books about my life at fairenoughcomic.com and records available at standuprecords.com. And I'm on X at Daniel Lobel. All right.
Yashikaya.
That does it for this episode of We Think It's Funny. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time with another exciting and jam-packed episode. Ami, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Wow.
What do you think of the theme music?
I love this. What's this from?
It was written for me.
Yeah?